Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the second session in our series on grant writing. And I know there's a few new faces and a few that were here from last time. So welcome back and welcome. I wanted to take a minute to just introduce Samin properly. Last time I just kind of like, oh, here's my friend Samin. This time I'm going to do it right because as women, sometimes we find it hard to really give ourselves the credit we deserve. And I think it's very important to acknowledge when we have really amazing women in the room. So this was shared on the event, but it's really, I found it incredible. So I'm going to read her bio. So Samin Piracha is the Global Fellowship and Venture Fundraising Lead at Ashoka. Samin has previously worked at the Smithsonian Institution, the Proteus Fund, and the United Nations Association of the National Capital Area, among others. She builds relationships and inspires change through philanthropy. She is a relentless advocate for women's rights and social justice, working with Muslim women in her community for more than 25 years. A graduate of the University of Florida and Nova Southeastern University, Samin is an esteemed nonprofit leader and strategist. It's all true, Samin. I can vouch for you, mashallah. So I think it really is important as women, and we are I think all of us are women. No, I see it. I see someone who may not be. Put your pronouns in your name when you rename yourself. That'll help. But as individuals identifying as women, sometimes we find it hard to say that. I think I just wanted to really show some gratitude to Samin for taking the time out to be here and sharing all of that experience with us and guiding us to understand this whole grant writing process. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Sadaf Saeed. I'm the executive director of the Muslim Women's Organization. And we also have Salwa Sid Ahmed. She is a volunteer who helps manage our Women's Action Network. Our Women's Action Network is an initiative through which we empower Muslim women leaders to really tackle some of the dilemmas that we're facing in the Muslim community, and also empowers the Muslim women to be successful leaders in their community. And if we're empowering Muslim women, we're empowering other women too, right? Not everybody in this room is a Muslim woman, but this knowledge, I think, can benefit all women. So we welcome everyone that's in this space, and we really appreciate that you took the time out on a Tuesday night for the second week in a row, and hopefully another week after we have spring break here. So our next session will be on the 23rd after this. But thank you all. I'm going to hand it over to Samin and mute myself up. Here you go, Samin.
Thank you, Sadaf. And good evening. Assalamu alaikum to everyone on the call. Thank you again for joining. I must not have done a bad job last time if people are back the second time. So for the people who are new to the call, the stand-up comedy comes part and parcel with the fundraising workshop. So just be forewarned. I wanted to, Salwa, can we start sharing the slides, please? All right, thank you. Can we go to the second slide? Oh man, it still comes up that way. Okay, never mind. I try to make it pretty and it just, Zoom makes everything more complicated than it needs to be. So I wanted to start off with a recap of our last workshop. And I really wanted to emphasize the first point, that fundraising is an exchange. I think a lot of people, like when I had asked what type of emotion fundraising brings forward for people, most of them were negative, right? Like it ranged from being horrified to being anxious, stressed out. In previous workshops, I've heard like people have hives, all the bad, tragic things that one can think of are associated to fundraising. And I would like to change that. Not to say that I don't get nervous, not to say that I also don't get anxious, but it helps to reframe what fundraising is, right? So it's not groveling, it's not begging, it's not like badgering people. It's actually an exchange, and it's an equal exchange. Like there are definitely power dynamics that are associated with relationships, but I think helping to understand our relationship with fundraising helps with those power dynamics and that relationship building. So just to reiterate and really make all of you understand this, please. After today, all of us know that fundraising is an exchange where a donor is supporting you to do the fabulous work that you do that they cannot do, right? So after this, hopefully when I ask what emotions do fundraising bring forward for you, it's going to be not anxiety. It's not going to be, I'm filled with horror. Yeah. So, and then another way to look at this is that for those people who organize for a living, this is just organizing a different community around your cause, right? So it's philanthropy, funders, people with means. Second, it's your relationship with money. You have to be introspective and reflective. Is it hindering your fundraising or is it helping your fundraising? So I'm not going to go back too deeply into this, but just to share with the new people on the call today that really think about what your relationship with money is, because that is definitely in the back of our minds as we are negotiating money resources for our organizations. And then second, did anybody, or thirdly, I guess, did anyone do the homework? Did anyone, you, Lisa, great. Oh, Qatar, great. Would you like to share what happened?
Well, I didn't go.
And I found it. Okay.
Oops.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say researched the organization, similar organizations to the organization I'm trying to fundraise for, and looked at their contacts and made a list, but did not contact them yet. So that step of actually reaching out, I do have another list of individuals that I've worked with before, but I'm going into a completely different sector right now. So this is a whole new network that I need to cultivate. And yeah, so the next step is to actually reach out.
Thank you.
Okay, so I did the, I identified organizations that, including the Ford Foundation. I tracked down who their program manager is. In the case of the Ford Foundation, I went by the description of their area, but also I contacted a coalition member who gets funding from them to find out who their contact is at the Ford Foundation. So I found a few. I found like 4 that I think look promising. I found last week really, really motivating. So, okay. So I did that. And then, but I did not contact them because our organization has really changed. It's evolved into something other than what it started out being. And so our one pager no longer really reflects who we are. So part of the homework, I guess, was meeting with my partner and trying to deciding what we want, who we are, who we want to be when we grow up. We're still working on that. So that that can be reflected in our executive summary, as well as a budget of what we want, what we want to do things now, like upcoming events, and along with who we want to be, like what our thoughts are we could go forward if we had the funding. So that's what I did.
Amazing. Thank you. And hopefully after the series, all of you will be better situated to actually go and feel confident in scheduling those calls and having those conversations. Did anyone else want to share if they did the homework?
Hi, Rachel here.
Hi, Rachel.
So I did, and after the last session, it was really helpful on kind of finding more foundations. I did find a couple of them that I feel like we fit into the categories, but I'm so nervous to like make the first phone call. Like I am always the person that reaches out via email first and not a phone call. So I honestly would have even no idea what to say. I probably would like freak out and hang up the phone at first or something. But I did find some foundations. I feel like I had been always under the understanding that, oh, there's no way I'll get a foundation grant. And now looking at a lot of these, I'm like, wow, I would see qualify, whether or not I can write the grant appropriately or not. It's really cool to see that, oh, there is a whole lot more out there than I thought there was. So I appreciate that. That's what I got.
I totally hear you on calling and hanging up. I've done that in the past because it is nerve-wracking, right? And when I was starting out, I really didn't know how I was going to be received. Honestly, if it helps, what I started doing was writing down my script, right? Exactly what I was going to say. And it would be right in front of me. And in the beginning, I'm sure the person on the other end thought I was reading something, but who cares? I don't care, right? Like I got it done. And then it's honestly just practice. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And the point of this exercise is to make you just kind of do something a little different, a little outside of your box, to start growing your fundraising muscles in a way that you probably are not used to, right? So I think being scared is totally normal and acceptable, but I challenge you, I invite you to step in that fear and push against it, right?
I guess I
So-
wouldn't.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, I mean to cut you off. I guess I wouldn't really even know like what to say. Like, how would I begin that conversation of just like, hi, I was curious if we're eligible. Like, how should I go about it? Like, I wouldn't know what the leading initial questions would be or how I would establish the communication.
This is going to sound silly, but honestly, when you're trying to find funders, it's kind of like dating. So you've seen that there are certain things that are aligning and you're trying to figure out if it's going to be a match, right? So I would say you already know the questions you want to ask them, which is, hey, I saw your profile, maybe foundation website, right? Like these 3 things jumped out at me, and I feel like there could be a good alignment between what you're interested in and what we do.
Okay,
And
thank you.
I talk to you, like you already have everything that you need to be able to speak to somebody. I think that the friction or the barrier there is the power dynamics, right? Like you feel like you don't want to start a conversation off on the wrong foot, where you're basically maybe diminishing your chances of getting a grant. And that's not how it works, right? And the person will be upfront about whether they feel there is a connection, there is alignment, would they like to pursue it? Like I shared last time, I picked up the phone, I called this person. She was interested in the beginning. Towards the end of it, she's like, yeah, I don't think this is gonna work.
Okay, thank you.
All right. All right. We can move to the next slide, please. So the goals for today are basically increasing familiarity with components of a grant proposal, right? We're going to write an executive summary together, not the same one. It's going to be specific to you guys. And my hope is that you guys become more comfortable and confident with writing a grant proposal. Next slide, please. So today it's the beginnings of the grant proposal. No, it's okay. You can go to before putting pen to paper. Yeah. And before we kind of start to dive into what a grant proposal should look like, I wanted us to take a little time to really reflect on before we even start writing the grant proposal, right? Like a lot of us are in a rush to get things done, and that's not necessarily the best way to approach this. Of course, it's different when you have like you just hear about an opportunity and unfortunately it's always due in a few hours, or maybe you have a grace period of it's tomorrow, right? So I want us to not be in that position so that we can take more opportunities of these kinds of opportunities that come along our way, right? Like maximize on them. And so in an ideal world, I'm saying, right? Like it should really not be rushed. You should take your time, you should plan, you should gather all the information, and then you should start to write. And also include the right people from the beginning. Those could be your board members, the people who are actually doing the programs. Maybe you have volunteers who have a lot of direct knowledge of how the programs work, or your services, and also perhaps the people that you are actually even serving, right? Like having all those types of information at hand before you start to tackle writing a grant proposal is, I would really say it's critical, and it will make for a much stronger proposal. And then I was just posing these questions like, please consider like why you, like what do you bring as an applicant? What is your experience, length of time in this space? Why are you the expert? What is your fiscal viability, right? Like last time I had mentioned that people give to people, but people also give to those projects that or organizations that are perceived to be successful, right? So yes, you need money, but not because you're a sinking ship or because your organization is on fire, right? So to really think about these things before you start to write your grant proposal. Next slide, please.
I mean, I have a question.
Yes.
Do you want the questions as they're coming into the chat? Do you want people to, do you want me to let you know of any questions, or do you want to save those to the end?
We can do it as they come up. And I'm sorry,
Oh,
I forget to look
yeah.
at the chat.
I can let you know. So Samira asked, is calling recommended? This is for the previous conversation. Is calling recommended to help establish a rapport, or gathering or gather info, or both? Like when you're calling the people at the foundation, what is the purpose? To establish rapport or to gather information? Or
I
both?
think it's both, right? Like sometimes, I mean, okay, so I was being a bit assertive with my assignment where I said you should call people. It's okay to also email them, but I feel like it's easier to ignore an email than it is to ignore somebody calling, right? And so what I'm trying to do is get us in the door so that there is an invitation to apply for a grant. There are lots of people who are looking at the same opportunities as us. And so if we have an advantage over somebody else, that helps us get closer to our goal of getting funded. And think about it, like if you're already anxious about calling somebody, most likely others are similarly situated, right? Like everyone's like, well, I'd rather, send out an email, which is fine. But I feel like you get more traction if you reach out for over the phone. Because like I said, like no one's going to be like, yeah, no, I'm not interested in this, just hang up on you. At least they will entertain your call, right? And who knows where that conversation is going to go. I think email introductions are, if you're going to go the email route, think about other people who have connections to that funder. And if that person can do an introduction for you to that funder, or maybe they give you the permission to use them in your email to that funder. That won't be the case all the time, but at least like I'm, just thinking about other ways you can have an advantage in pursuing a lead over an email.
Thank you. Rachel also has her hands up. She has a question. Go ahead, Rachel.
I did, and then I got listening, and I think I confused myself. Okay, it was in relation to, we're talking about people give people to people. You need you're proposing yourself as being successful. You need money because you're successful, not a sinking ship. So when you're doing the budget and you're writing the information in, and like you know that you don't have the money, and like maybe I'm not getting my, I don't know if I can connect my words to what I'm trying to
Well, I think we're going to be
So
getting
it's the
to that
same-
budgeting
okay.
part of it later, so maybe we can get to it when we
Budgets
do the
we'll cover
budget.
it in the next workshop, but I understand what you're saying. It does sound confusing, but I will address this better when we are actually talking about budgets.
Maybe what's an example of a sinking ship?
So you know how I stressed financial viability, that, or fiscal viability, right? It's not about like you don't have money. It's about you are spending money in the right way, but let's say you're under-resourced or underfunded. That's different than you are getting money but then misusing that money. Your budget will show that, right? Like you're misappropriating funds, or like just not really good at handling money. That's what I mean.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. So these are the most comprehensive way I could think of different components of a proposal. And I'm sure I probably missed a few. But I feel like this, if you have this in your on your radar as you sit down to write a proposal, I think more than likely you will have everything you need to address the umpteen billion versions of grant proposals that funders want from prospective grantees. And so it's like the cover letter, an executive summary, sometimes it's called a needs statement or a problem statement or a statement of needs, goals and objectives. There is the program project design. So basically your methods and strategies, a budget, an evaluation part. This is the other funding and sustainability. Like you're not only pursuing this one funder to fund everything that you are proposing. So basically, this is kind of also like your budget narrative. And then like history and organizational background. So as long as you have kind of written these bullet points out somewhere, you should be really well prepared to tackle any type of grant opportunities that are out there. There may be areas where you may have to like flesh it out more, or just tweak it a little bit. But and when you get the slides, you'll see that the cover letter and budget have been highlighted. So there are some examples that you can link, like I've linked to, that you can read over for yourself. That should be helpful. Next, oh, let me see, somebody is, I think, a question in chat. Yes, accomplishments are also sometimes an ask in proposals. Yep. So like, I guess you could group that under history and organizational background as a list of your accomplishments. All right, next slide, please. So quickly, a cover letter. This is like, I think most of the national foundations, so like a Ford Foundation, Kellogg Foundation, they ask for this. And what is a cover letter? It's basically a letter to your funder saying, this is what I'm asking for in a letter format, right? So it's something that you will write last, like absolutely last. It's addressed to a particular person. Usually it's the president of the foundation, or perhaps it'll be to your program officer. And it just briefly states what your proposal is asking for, a summary of your program. I like to sometimes put in kind of like the grant period that we're asking for and how much money we're going to be asking for. And if we've worked with the funder before, just thanking them for their continued support, right? So it's like, it's honestly a business letter, just summarizing why there's this proposal underneath that cover letter. So just priming the person to receive your proposal. And it's basically your first impression to the funder. So it's your chance to make them care about your mission. Let's see, something. So the ask, where does the ask fit in this list? So it can be argued it's going to be everywhere. Everything you're putting in the proposal is an ask, right? So the ask will be in that one sentence that says, we request X amount of money to do X, right? So simply put, that's your ask, but everything else in the proposal is supporting that ask, so that once they've finished reading the proposal, it's a no-brainer to be able to give you the funding that you've requested. So it kind of mimics the ask in a fundraising cycle, in the sense that you have to build cultivate the funder up to a point, and ask is 5% of the process. So it's the same thing. It's that one sentence, but everything else in the proposal has supported that one sentence, so that the person reading it says, no brainer, this must be funded. I will convince our board of directors to fund this particular organization.
Question.
Yes.
So, so when you said last time that sometimes people forget to put the ask in the proposal, everything is in there, but not the ask. So this is the one sentence that you were saying is missing?
Yes. And now I am reflecting on how I shared that. I think I meant that more for when you're actually talking to people rather than just your grant proposal. Because when you are at that stage, there is the understanding that you are asking for money, right? So just imagine, and this has happened before I joined the Smithsonian, my team did this, where they would talk to people and tell them of the amazing things that they were doing, and that would be it. And then they were surprised that they did not get any funding. And the thing is, like, imagine somebody, like, you're in the business of giving money out, people have requested a meeting with you, and then they proceed to tell you the most amazing things that they're doing, and they get up and leave. What are you supposed to do with that? Like, I mean, okay, this is amazing. I love the Smithsonian. I'm glad they're doing this kind of stuff. Now I have things I can share at parties. But I don't really have much more than that, right? And so when I got there and I saw this trend, I was like, how come we're not making an ask? Because, like, no, people should know that we want money. That's why we requested the call. That's why we requested the meeting. That's why we sent our annual report. But if you don't ask that you need funding, people are not going to think you need funding, right? Just because they're in the business of giving money away doesn't mean that they know you need the money. You have to say it. Is that clearer?
Yes. One more follow-up. You mentioned, I mean, somebody was talking about the sinking ship idea. And so when we are asking donors, like when we are fundraising outside of the grant proposal,
Mhm.
I mean, attended some webinars and, read articles and things like that, that you should tell people that you really, really need money. And if they didn't give, then it's going to really affect what you're doing. But with the grant proposal, you're saying that that we have to show that we are really, really successful. And so that's why we need the money. So I'm just trying to reconcile the two. Maybe I'm missing something in between. So if you could just put those together and kind of share the difference.
Mhm.
Did
So what
I ask the question right? Does it help you understand?
I understand what you're asking. Yes,
Mhm.
I understand what you're asking. And I think it's my explanation that wasn't clear, right? So if you think about investing in something, naturally, what do you want to invest in? You want to invest in something that you know is going to be a sure thing, or something that is going to be bringing you a great return in your investment, right? And so when I said people want to invest in something that's successful rather than a sinking ship, think about it as a strategy, right? Like, yes, you're a nonprofit organization and you need funding to be able to support the wonderful initiatives that you do as an organization. You could be struggling because of lots of things. Let's say you had a amazing funder who now has redid their strategy and it no longer fits with what you do and is no longer going to be funding you, right? That is not a sinking ship. That is a struggle. And that does, I wasn't saying like, don't be transparent, but to talk about your challenges in a way that don't make the investment of a prospective funder something that they wouldn't want to do. Does that make sense?
Yes. And when it comes to like the other types of donors, like individuals or, the people who come to the banquets and things like that. So like, I'm just trying to internalize all the things that you're saying. So probably it's the same, because even with them, you don't tell them that you're just gonna be completely gone if they don't donate, but you're struggling, so their help would be very important. So
Right.
I was just trying to reconcile both the concepts in the idea.
These are great questions. And this is something that is real for, unfortunately, a lot of organizations, right? Like, how do you balance your needs with perhaps marketing what your needs are, right? So it
Right,
comes
right.
down to how you're going to talk about your needs versus your struggles, or your needs and your struggles, right?
Yeah.
And then because fundraising is all about relationships, with some funders, it's going to be very fanciful, like footwork, to talk about struggles in a way that you're not telling them like, we can't keep the lights on, right? Because that type of funder is going to run away because it's their first time interacting with you. Versus funders that know you really well, you know them really well, and you can be very honest with them. And then everyone else is kind of like in between those two.
That's a great point. A distinction between the two. I mean, not two funders are the same.
Exactly. So I mean, that's what I'm saying, like, it's relationship building. But you will have to think about who is primed to see your like worst self versus those who need to see your best self.
Hmm.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Oh, of course. Yes, Mishka, you wanted to give an analogy?
Hey, Salikum. I wanted to give a quick analogy to the person who asked the question. It's like when you go for a job interview, like when you're fresh out of college. You know, hello?
Yeah, you were a little choppy before, so we couldn't hear your
Okay.
beginning.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, the robot said something about *6 to unmute. But okay, so yes, it's like when you are fresh out of college and you're applying for a job, you don't go into the interview saying, oh, I really need this job to pay my bills so I can live on my own and this, that. You tell them like the skills you're gonna bring and what you can achieve. Of course you need the job, but you gotta, it's like, I think that's a good way to see it. And I think what she meant also about the sinking ship. Another thing, in terms of that, like, what was I gonna say? It's like you can. The problem is so big with your funding. We can help more people. Not like we're gonna close as an organization if we don't get your funding. If that makes sense. I think that's been successful from my organization. I think there was 2 analogies, but I'll just stop there.
Thank you. Thank you. No, that made sense. All right. Are we good? All right. Next slide, please. Okay, so another component of the proposal is your organizational information. And this is basically like why you. It's to establish your credibility, your expertise as an organization. This is where you highlight your past successes and accomplishments, any collaboration, partnerships that you are part of in your particular sector or area. You outline any key leadership or organization that you're bringing to the table. So this is like your board of directors, your other maybe like staff members, volunteers, those sorts of people. So I just briefly wanted to go over the cover letter and the organizational information because they are part of most proposals, and it's good to have this kind of information ready to be able to put into the proposal as they are asking for it. But kind of the meat of the proposal are the 2 that we're going to talk about today, which are the executive summary and then the needs statement. Next slide, please. Let me just check. Okay. All right, so what is an executive summary? It describes the issue or problem that is to be met, the objectives to be achieved and activities to achieve those objectives, total cost of the project and amount request. And it just generally summarizes your entire grant proposal. When you are writing an executive summary, you are tackling a key element of the proposal. A well-written executive summary can be used interchangeably as your letter of inquiry. So sometimes before you can even apply for a proposal or for a grant, some foundations actually require you to write a letter of inquiry. And so it's not technically part of a grant proposal because it's like the prerequisite. You will get an invitation to apply for a grant when you write the letter of inquiry. So an executive summary having that and being able to tweak it for an LOI is a great thing. Yeah. And so basically it's been said that executive summaries are the most important element of the proposal because in a few hundred words, it summarizes your grant application. So you really need to know your work. You really need to know the community. You really need to know the importance and the urgency to be able to be very concise and write the executive summary to move somebody to actually give you the grant, or to keep reading your proposal so that like at the end of it, they give you a grant. So I was thinking this is our time to actually write an executive summary, but let's see. Can you explain the letter of inquiry one more time? So basically an LOI, as it's mostly known as, is a 2-page capture of what it is you would like funding for. So a lot of foundations get sometimes thousands of proposals, and it's difficult for them to kind of go through them and really give them the time and attention they need to give you an answer back, right? So like if everyone is sending in a 15 to 20 page proposal, it's really difficult for especially like smaller foundations to have the resources to be able to read everybody's proposal and get back to them. And so this is a way to kind of, and this is not the right word, but it's the only one that's coming to me, like weed out proposals or potential proposals, because they're looking for very specific things. So it's basically an ask of prospective grantees to write down in very like concise terms what it is, who they are, what it is they're doing, why they're the best ones situated for it, what would happen if they got the funding, how they would use it, basically. So in essence, what we're going to do in this exercise in writing the executive summary is essentially a letter of inquiry. Did that answer your question? Yes, okay, great. And I can try to find a resource for LOIs, and that can be included as you get the slides from tonight's presentation. All right, next slide, please. All right. Does everyone have something? Well, I know we're on our computers, but something to write on or write with, because we're going to do this together. And I'm allotting, I think, 5 minutes per paragraph for this exercise. So just please humor me on this. As I mentioned, an executive summary is describing the issue or problem that's to be met, objectives to be achieved, activities to achieve, and it summarizes your entire grant proposal. And so how do we do this in a very concise manner, right? Well, this is my breakdown of what I think an executive summary should look like. So it's essentially 3 paragraphs. And the first paragraph should look like these 3 things. So your first sentence should be your mission statement. So please, if you can take a few minutes to write down your mission statement. And for those who may be fast writers or typers, the second sentence is what is being requested and a dollar amount. And then the third sentence is the statement of how the program or project is unique. It's okay if it's more than 3 sentences. Sometimes I'm known to not know how to count, which kind of sucks because I am a fundraiser. Yeah, so this is a good exercise to see if what you've, I mean, right now I'm basically asking everyone to dump this type of information into your first paragraph, right? So it's better to start off with more and then edit it and pare it down to the essentials. So do not feel bad if you have more than, like a concise paragraph at this point. This is a first draft. So it's okay. How's everyone doing? Do people still need some more time? It's hard to tell. Okay, so a few people need a little more time, just fine. We have time. It's okay if it's longer than what you're expecting. Don't feel so restricted by me saying your first sentence should look like this, your second sentence is this, your third sentence is this, right? Like if it's more than a sentence to do said sentence, it's okay. We can look at it after we've written the executive summary to see where you can make some edits to make it a bit more concise. So I don't know if everyone would have been, if we had had time to read everyone's aloud or to send it to me. But what I was thinking was that we can do this together because there are two other paragraphs that need to be written, to write those. And then for those who are feeling brave, for them to read it out, and then we can have a discussion around what they found to be challenging, and to get input from the other women on the call or people on the call to see like how you can make it more concise. Are you missing anything? How to make it a bit better. Does that sound like a good idea? I'm going to make this democratic a bit. Okay, sounds good. I will ask you to do that once we've written the entire executive summary. Oh, Hafsa is saying to do it paragraph by paragraph. We can do it paragraph by paragraph. All right.
We don't have to. I was just thinking that, I don't know, like if I messed up the first paragraph, I don't want to continue that pattern in the second paragraph.
Well, the second paragraph will look a little different, but that's okay. Let's do it paragraph by paragraph. I just want to be, I don't want to do the same thing I did last time where we're running over time. So I just have to be better at managing time. All right, so who would like to share? I know Rachel wants to share what she wrote. So I will let Rachel do it. And then after that, is there anyone else who was like really wanting to share? Okay, and Hafsa. All right.
Start?
Yeah, go ahead, Rachel.
Oh, okay. Okay, here goes. Project Streetlight brings like-minded volunteers and community advocates together in an effort to empower our youth in their bravery to be crime-free through community service and literacy. We are actively empowering Central Florida's youth by strengthening their imagination, nourishing literacy development, and providing books to families for a healthy, sustainable future. We are requesting funding to support our book club, tutoring room, and empowerment workshops. Project Streetlight is a well-rounded, diverse organization that focuses on judgment-free safe spaces for children to thrive and explore their personal reading levels. Our workshops take literature with characters that look like our participants and apply the reading in books to real-life scenarios in an effort to engage in healthy conversation and problem-solving skills. End.
Thank you. Before I say something, does anybody else want to share their reaction?
I would like to.
Go ahead.
Also, I believe you were speaking about me earlier about not having my pronouns. I am she, her. I mean, I am female. My name throws people off all the time. But listening, it was written so beautifully. I would be terrified to share my first paragraph. But anyways, I was wondering, does it have to be that specific at first? Because I did miss the first class, but just looking at what you have here for the first paragraph, I made mine a little bit, not necessarily vague. I just didn't go into detail what the budget would be for everything specific. So while it was wonderful listening to that, and I know exactly what she needs and where she needs it, does this paragraph for this executive summary have to be that specific?
That's a great question. And Rachel, I will get back to you, but I will address Troy's question first. My experience has been the more concise and specific you are in your asks, the better it becomes, right? It's not that you're not doing other work that shouldn't be mentioned, but if it's not necessarily part of your ask, it could get confusing to the person who's reading it, right? Because in the first class, we didn't really start talking about, or the last workshop, we didn't really talk about the grant proposal in the way of writing it. So we're just doing that now. What I was saying in that last workshop was basically finding the right funder, meaning the fit is in the alignment with what they make their grants to, and that you fit in that definition, right? So you've had some type of interaction with the prospective funder, and they probably know your program or your organization in a broader sense, but the proposal is a way of making it that much more specific, right? And so that can also vary, because maybe you're asking for a general operating opportunity. And
Yes,
so if you're doing that, then the executive summary is going to have to be broader. But if you're asking for a particular project, then your executive summary should be tailored to reflect that project.
That makes perfect sense. So you're saying basically, if you're, because what I was writing about was about an overall budget for like yearly operations. So I left it a little bit more vague and spoke more about to what the organization is doing. But you're saying if you have a specific project or thing that you're asking, you know, the money for, tailor it to that and show them how what they can give and what you're doing, how those match up and reflect that. Correct?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. I'm good. Thank you.
You're welcome. And Rachel, I was going to say the same thing. Like, that was amazing. I thought, I mean, I didn't think it was wordy at all. I think you're doing amazing work. And I was like, if I was a funder, I would totally be invested in supporting the initiative that you start mentioning. And that's just the first paragraph of your executive summary, right? And so there's much more proposal that's coming. So great job. Hafsa, do you want to share?
Did you want me to share screen or read?
Whatever you'd like. I think reading is fine.
Okay. All right. I do tend to get a little verbose, so I apologize in advance. All right, Ansar of Worcester is devoted to helping refugees and immigrants who have been resettled in the central Massachusetts community. Our emphasis is on charity, access, social integration, and advocacy. We are requesting $15,000 to support a summer program which focuses on enhancing the literacy skills of school-age children in order to prevent summer slide. By creating a summer program which focuses on speaking, listening, reading, and writing utilizing high-quality text, we intend to increase students' reading levels during a time which historically shows a loss in English reading skills. Combining this with physical activities, our plan is to provide an academic, social, and physical opportunity for children who are often unable to participate in programs such as these due to financial constraints.
Thank you. Does anyone want to share their thoughts? And I'm only asking because I keep talking, so I will share my thoughts, but does anybody else feel compelled, moved to share their thoughts after listening to Hafsa?
Maybe more of a question. I liked what she said. I guess she gave a specific number. I'm wondering about the specific number, like if you're not like detailing a bunch of other numbers in it, when do we enter in numbers like that, maybe?
Great question. So one thing that you will start to notice is that a grant proposal, parts of it are repetitive. So in the cover letter, you are summarizing the entire proposal. In the executive summary, you're adding a little bit of more information than what was in the cover letter. Then the needs statement is going to build off of the executive summary and have a bit more information in there. And then when you get to the project design, program design, the objectives and everything, that will like paint a broader picture, right? So I say that if there isn't restrictions on characters or in the proposal itself from the funder, if you can insert how much money you need, do so at every opportunity you have, because it's in a way a subliminal message to them that this is the need, right? So like after I walk away from a proposal, there should be certain things that are sticking in my head, like why you're the right organization to be doing this, why this is really important, why this is urgent, and how much money do you need. So unless it looks kind of out of place, I think mentioning what you want or what you need in terms of money, like as early as you can kind of introduce that in the conversation in the proposal, I think serves your interest best.
So then I think that she did a great job because she introduced it with the number 15,000 and then built on what exactly the program was without being I guess it was the first like I know that I remember 15,000 literacy and activities from it.
Right.
I have a quick comment and question.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was very well written. It really made the case for the program, but I'm wondering now, after the first question, there seemed to be some language on the objectives, but if it's okay to repeat these different narratives within the same document or within the executive summary itself, is it okay to start with the aims and objectives or have some language on aims and objectives in the first paragraph and then also repeat it again in the in listing the objectives on the same executive summary?
So that was going to be my my sharing of what I heard too. Like I think Hafsa did an amazing job as well. But I agree, like the objectives kind of crept in there. And the thing is, this is just the first paragraph, right? This is just the introductory paragraph to the executive summary. There are 2 more paragraphs that are coming after this one. And it's the second one where we can actually start going into more detail about what our ask is. So basically you've positioned yourself as this is who we are as an organization. This is our request. And this is why it's important, because we're the ones who are uniquely placed to be able to do what we're asking for, essentially. And Hafsa, when you see like the second paragraph and how to write it, you may end up moving that particular piece into your second paragraph.
Got it.
Yeah, you'll see. And also these are suggestions, right? Like I've used these, not like this is etched in stone, but it's a good guide to get you started in writing what seems like an overwhelming and impossible task when you see that you have to write a grant proposal. So also don't think this is etched in stone, but this is a really great way for us to really think about how to structure a conversation on paper, because you won't be there to talk them through it, right? Anything else before we move on to the second paragraph? And I kind of have to, I think, hurry it on my end because we are kind of at time. Okay, if no more questions, next slide, please. Yeah, second paragraph. So this is the second paragraph. And as you'll see, the way that it's kind of put together, and I should have maybe bolded some of the things that need to be inserted. So the words that are in brackets are your insertions into what is being asked, right? So it's program or project name was designed in whatever month, year to do what? Since its inception, the program project has grown, expanded, served, whatever it is, who, what, due to reason, we have a need for, and then what is your need for, but lack funding to provide whatever it is that you're trying to do. Program, project name strives to do what, of, for whom, through, and then you list your services that you provide. I know that sounded really weird as I read it, but take a few minutes to use this as a frame to put in what it is that you actually are trying to get funding for. Does that make sense?
Can I make a quick comment?
Yes.
A word that just struck me was the lack funding to provide it. And that brought me back to the sinking ship kind of thought process, where it seems like the word lack signals a sinking ship, or is too negative of a word, maybe. Could we say, but we are seeking, and therefore we are seeking funding to provide it?
Yes, I agree with you. Thank you for catching that. That was my goof. I do prefer what you just shared, like we are seeking funding for, rather than but lack funding to provide. Yes, that would totally reinforce the sinking ship. Or you can say, and we are seeking funding for, or seeking funding to provide.
Mm-hmm. Thank
you. Thank you for actually pointing that out. That was a great catch. Thank you.
So what if it's a new program, something that you're trying to launch? Would you just design to launch in?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
This is kind of the Mad Libs part of the presentation.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So I'm guessing I missed out on the part with the sinking ship, but can there be like a play on words with that? I mean, in hearing it, I understand the concept of a sinking ship, but me personally, I didn't feel that the word lack was negative. In my mind when I was about to type it. I was thinking more, I work in theater, so working for a nonprofit theater company. And if we are producing a show, I would say to someone, we're doing this show this spring, and I'm coming to you asking about the grant, because currently we do lack some of the funding to be able to offer this to so and so and so and so, and that's where you would come in. Like, that's the part of the conversation I would have. So if I relay something like that in that format, is that necessary? I mean, this is writing, but I mean in conversational. Is that something that's like a negative? Should you choose, like, I don't want to dig too much into like specific wording, but is that something that would relay to someone as a negative thing to say that? Because I mean, you are asking for money, so they have a natural assumption that you lack money or the funding.
I would say, like, honestly, it's the type of relationship you have with that funder. I think lack sometimes can be negative, right? And so I think, like, if your first reaction was that, yes, I lack funding and that's why I've come to you, then perhaps this is hard. Like, I don't know how to make that call for everyone.
It basically just depends on the situation.
Yes.
Who you're speaking to in your relationship.
Yeah. And I think lack funding to provide it in particular instances totally makes sense to structure the sentence or conversation that way. And then in other conversations, it would draw too much attention, if that makes any sense. And it's
Yes,
better to say like, we are seeking to provide,
understood.
right?
Thank you.
Mhm. So it's like the classical law school answer. It depends.
I
All
guess
right.
what really resonated with me was your first, what you mentioned in the beginning about really defining the relationship between the organization and the donor, and looking at that relationship as you coming in to do the work that they can't do, or they, I think that's how you put it, in the sense that this is a partnership,
Mhm.
and in shifting the framework to that type of relationship, instead of the power, emphasizing the power dynamic, and moving towards something where it's more of a partnership framework, it's more empowering to use words that are less, that don't allude to that power dynamic.
Good point. Mhm. I mean, yes. So
I mean, but again, it's situation specific, and it depends on your relationship to begin with. But it is really interesting to look at it in that way that you proposed in the beginning, was that you're really supporting the donor and the foundation in the work that you are doing,
right,
rather than the other way around.
right, right.
I really love that. There's a million things going on in my head about that, and how we structure the writing process.
Exactly.
Um,
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I really like that point because that is the partnership thing is something that struck me. And I think we should start using it in words. Like, for example, here we could say, but we are seeking your partnership through funding to provide, something like that. So kind of setting a stage right there, saying it's a partnership,
Right.
so we can help, whatever program, provide whatever program. So I think she has raised a very good point. I appreciate that.
And I've actually changed it in the materials that you will get. So I've taken that lack
Thank
funding
you.
out. Because words are important, right? Words sway us in one direction over another. So if we can be proactive, we can be very positive in framing what the relationship will look like. It serves our purpose and furthers what we're trying to do in that relationship with that funder. Okay, I'm trying to be conscious of time. Does anyone want to share their second paragraph?
Yes, because I feel not confident in it at all.
Okay.
I think, unless somebody else wants to jump in. I tried to give it a second. Okay. Project Streetlight was designed in September 2019 to engage our youth with the Central Florida community. Since its inception, the program has grown and served our youth, homeless community, and targeted neighborhoods with high juvenile crime rates, coupled with a high percentage of single-parent households. Due to our opportunities for expansion to incorporate our book club at local schools, we have a need for an employee and a large diverse book selection for donations and seek your partnership to do so. We strive to accommodate our youth through their times of need.
Any reactions? Any comments? I think that was wonderful. I think you really did a good job of explaining what it is that you need support in and why it's important when it was, thought of, and basically what the program is going to do and how it's going to have an effect. So Rachel, honestly, I don't understand why you undersell yourself like this.
I think that I have a hard time with the numbers and the words. Like, to me, this paragraph feels, because there's no numbers, like intangible. Like sometimes I feel like I don't know, like being vague or probably second guessing myself a million times. But I think when we go back to, you're talking about like our own personal relationship with money, I think perhaps that might be something that is causing like self-doubt and, a battle inside of me when I'm writing things like this.
Well, I'm going to tell you that you really do not need to be second guessing yourself. I think your first paragraph was really good. Your second paragraph is just right on par with it. So I think you need to cut yourself some slack and give yourself grace. You're doing amazing work and you're able to communicate that to us and, potentially to new funders.
Thank you.
If there are no more comments on this second paragraph, I will move us to the third paragraph. Next slide, please. All right. So this one is a little more, I think, challenging to write than the other two. Because this isn't necessarily like first sentence, second sentence, third sentence, or like a Mad Libs version. But basically this third and final paragraph is you showing your program or project why it's extraordinary. It needs to include some type of data or statistics to support your claim. Usually in this paragraph, if you have quotes from letters of support from people that you've helped, or leaders in the community, those types of quotes can come in really handy in this final paragraph. And you follow up this last paragraph by encouraging them to consider partnering, collaborating, which we did in the second paragraph, but just to reinforce it here of how they can help you accomplish your goal or, fill your need. So I know we're really running short on time because I have to take you through the statement of needs. Can we skip writing this, or do people want some time to try to tackle this? Because I understand that this also has some quantitative and measurable data that needs to go in there to support your claim of why this is an important project. Okay, it doesn't seem like people would be upset if we kind of left this and moved on to the needs statement. Yes, you can share your final drafts with me if you'd like. I'm okay with that. Would it be helpful to add those letter of support as attachments as well? Yes, sometimes grant proposals will actually ask for additional information. And if you have those letters of support, that's a wonderful thing to add to a proposal. I'm just kind of going through this so that I haven't missed anybody. Okay. So next slide, please. Okay, so this is the next thing after you've kind of tackled the executive summary. It's the needs statement or statement of needs or problem statement. It basically defines the underlying problem or issue that your application is going to be addressing, right? Your proposal is going to be addressing. It is used to educate the funder and proposal reviewers about your needs and the changes you are seeking through this this funding of your program or your organization at large. And I kind of wanted to emphasize there are two things here. So I've been saying funder a lot, and that's basically your program officer and the foundation at large. But at times, what foundations also do is hire or ask for volunteers from the community or other communities to review proposals on their behalf, give them ratings, and then they actually look at the ratings to see who is going to get funding. And actually, I was part of this process with the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation in New York, where they had this huge fund and they had gotten over, I think, like, I can't even remember the number anymore, for a very limited pool of fund or pool of funding. And what they did was they actually reached out to people who are in different sectors, but in the nonprofit area, to sign up as proposal reviewers. And I was one of them. It was an amazing learning opportunity for me because I got to see how other people are writing their grant proposals and asking for support for their amazing projects. And I got to put the hat on as a like a funder, and basically, like, did they do a great job of, explaining what it is that they want to do, how much funding they need, who they are, their expertise, and what have you. And so it was interesting to see how we had to basically place people on the scale that the foundation gave to us. And then based on that, people were either told that they were going to be funded or not, which made what we had to do pretty intense and heavy, because I wanted everyone, I mean, honestly, every single proposal that I reviewed, I wanted to fund. But we knew that there was no way that everyone could be funded. And that made my task not as fun anymore, right? Because knowing that not everyone is going to actually get funding. But why I'm sharing this with you is know that sometimes foundations will actually go to other people outside of the foundation to review your proposal. And so that's why it's really important to write your proposal in a way where you're not assuming that the person who is reading your proposal knows much of anything about the issue, because you could have talked your program officer's ear off while you were talking to them about what it is you do. Sometimes it may get pushed to a proposal reviewer who is not part of the foundation. So you are the expert, and it's your responsibility to be able to convey this to a reader. Next slide, please. So why the needs statement? It's one of the most important reason a needs statement answers. Sorry, the most important reason a needs statement answers for a funder is basically why. So this is the part of the proposal that is making the case of why. So why this specific community? Why this specific geographic, area? Why does your organization care about this work? What should I as, why did I put what? Why should I as the funder care? Why your organization, your approach to this particular, problem or need in the community? Why should I as a funder believe you? Why should I believe my funding will make an impact? And then why now? So that is basically the need statement in a nutshell. It answers why for the funder. Next slide. And so I wanted to share some basic truths around a need statement. If you don't have a compelling need, you do not have a compelling project. That's basically how a funder is going to see it. Funders are not required to care about your need or project until you compel them to care. So it's kind of like the whole ask thing, like they won't give you money until you ask them, and they're not going to care about something if you don't compel them to care about it. Please don't confuse what your organization needs with the needs of the people you're trying to serve, right? If you do that, then you've kind of set yourself up for failure. There's a difference. If the needs are in your community, you must show the impact there. So you can't be talking about the national, like how something is showing up nationally, but that's not the same way that it is showing up locally for you. So you have to connect it to the funder that the local stuff is important. It's here. It can be a comparative data with national stuff, but basically if the needs are in your community, you have to show that the impact is there. No one is required to believe anything that you have not proven with accurate and credible data. So you have to be able to back up everything that you're saying with some type of data. Does anyone have any questions before we kind of move into how to structure a needs statement? It seems like no one has a question. All right, next slide, please.
I have a question, actually,
Okay.
sorry.
Mhm.
So with the need, so say if your community hasn't necessarily doesn't have data about something, right? Is it too early to apply for that grant? Do you need to first do like a needs assessment and things like that before you even apply for that grant? Like, how do you make that connection? Because, like, not there isn't really data out there for everything. Some of it is just like, okay, I walk into the masjid and there's no space for me. So I think it's, do you have to wait, do the research, get the data, and then apply for the grant? Or is it some of it like lived experience that can be shared?
That's a great question. I think if you can get data, that will always make it a more heftier framing for what you are trying to say, right? Like saying like this is a problem is not the same as this is the problem and this is the data that proves this is a problem. And I think there are certain things that just do not have the data available. And I think mentioning that can also highlight for the funder why it's important to support the particular project or program, right? Because it's underfunded, under-resourced. This is our unique contribution to this particular problem that the community is facing. I know
have
there was a
quick
request.
question.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Just a follow-up question on that. Do we, when we're looking at the lack of data for a specific need statement, can we reference another program or similar population and, you know, explore the evidence base that is out there with similar dynamics? Or is that too far-fetched?
It may not be too far-fetched if you can actually make that connection that there are similarities or parallels between the two communities. But you should be able to do that. Otherwise, it's just going to be a bit random.
Mhm.
So if you can make a clear connection between the two communities, I think it's worth incorporating that way.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, like DV is definitely an underreported thing. But there are lots of statistics that are still available, right? Like even hate crimes are so underreported. There are statistics that are available, but you can frame it in a way that highlights how problematic that is and how your project, your program, your organization is challenged by that, but also knows differently because of the rapport that you have with the community, and is able to talk about it through those experiences. Does that make sense? There's not going to be a perfect data set for every single thing that's out there, right? Like that's probably why it's part of the problem, because of a lack of resources and not just funding, just knowledge about those challenges to begin with. And there was a request to go back to the slide where all the whys were listed, but you will get, oh, Selwa did it. But I was going to say you are going to get the entire PowerPoint presentation. So no worries if you miss it. All right, so just to kind of quickly go through this, the need statements include your problem description. So basically, what is the problem? You show an understanding of the problem. So you don't just describe the symptoms of the problem, but it's like, it's the who, the what, the where, the when, the why, right? It's recognizing the problem. So why is it a problem? Who else sees it as a problem? What are the community stakeholder views?
In light of the lack of data, for example, if there is no data available for that particular target community, would the statement or a quote from a community member or something that indicates that the community is indeed also involved in this and the community members also see this, so it's not just your organization, but members of the community themselves, would that, going back to that question, why should I believe you?
Mm-hmm.
Would having those types of quotes or references to the community itself serve as evidence or as some type of, does it strengthen your statement in that sense?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. Definitely. I think funders do know that there are lots of communities that do not have the same, what is the word? Like not just access to resources, but that there hasn't been enough attention given so that those problems can actually be evaluated on some level to even communicate how bad of a problem it is, right? So like there are some communities that are now being a bit more open with their challenges, and there are surveys that happen, there are, you know, academic studies that happen. Sometimes the census is not enough, or federal data is not enough to be reflective of those challenges, but I feel like there are those resources that are now kind of understanding those gaps and are trying to be better at capturing data. But definitely, if you do not have data, that doesn't mean that you will not be funded or that you will have a weaker needs statement. It's just that you have to connect those dots for the funder. So as you said, taking quotes from people who are actually experiencing those problems that you are trying to you know, rectify in your communities really would help. It would be a great alternative to a survey or data that you could have had. Let me just make sure I covered everything for this slide. So this is basically the problem description, a recognition of the problem, what it is. And another way to, I don't know if everyone knows how to find data for their particular communities, but it's not just the census or like the federal government, but those are some great places to start. And a very underutilized, I think, resource is the local library. Like if you go to the librarian, sometimes they know where you can actually look for particular types of data set points. Another one is our local college or university. They might have done some type of survey or some type of, you know, project that might have data that you're looking for. So those are great places to actually even partner with to understand some other things that may be important to what you're doing as an organization and the community that you're serving. Next slide, please. Let me just make sure in the chat. Thank you, Dina. I will also put that in the materials when we share after this workshop. So problem implication, what will happen to the population served and the community if the problem is not resolved? Is there a cost to society, basically? Hurdles, clearly identify the challenges to addressing the problem, describing the gap between what exists and what ought to be, what has prevented resolution of the problem. So here it's basically, you have to be focused on how what you're doing is addressing the problem, why it's a problem, and how you're going to address that problem. My only thing here is just remember to focus on your local solutions rather than making it tied to something national. Just be hypersensitive about being focused locally when you are writing this part. Yeah, and don't assume that because it's a national problem that it's automatically a local problem, because it could have similarities, but local problems, or I shouldn't say problems, but local challenges have their own nuances, and just to be aware of them, and that's what you're trying to highlight. Next slide, please. And basically urgency, right? So we don't want to send something necessarily to a funder to say, we have this great idea, and in a year or two, we would love to address this, right? Like it should have urgency written into it. Like, why does it need to be addressed now? And what are you doing currently to address that problem? And, you know, the gap between it, like, it's not enough. This should have been solved yesterday, and this is what it will take for us to solve it, right? And also, what does that mean by solving the problem? Just being clear about what can be accomplished within the time frame of the grant. So this is something I'm struggling with at Ashoka right now. Ashoka established the field of social entrepreneurship, and we keep saying that it's a game changer. We elect amazing fellows who are going to transform, like dismantle and transform systems, right? But we've been doing this for 40 years. How long can we keep saying that we're going to realize the world that we want for all of us today, right? Is that achievable and measurable within the timeline of a grant? Most likely it is not. So we have to contextualize what we can actually realistically accomplish while we are trying to realize a world that is equitable, just, and fair for everyone. Next slide, please. And the last thing a needs statement should include is a human interest story. So providing the real example of how the problem is affecting someone's life and how your proposed program is going to impact their life. So making it real. And I know that, like, statistics, as we talked about, data is important, but also pairing that up with a real life example just drives the point home for everyone. If you really have human, and also I will say, for privacy's sake, you should get clearance from the person that you want to share the story of before you share it, even if it's in a grant proposal. Next slide. All right. So,
Real quick.
yes, go ahead.
Say we have, like, if we're using a real life example, and we're talking about kids, can we say, like, this volunteer is older and he feels as if he had this when he was younger that would have impacted his life positively? Or is that not such a great example? We should stick to the people that we would be impacting now.
I think that's okay to include that way.
Okay.
I mean, it's honestly, so these are just guidelines, right? Like, this is a skeleton that I've provided, and you can kind of shape it and form it to fit the narrative you would like to write or present to your funders. Nothing I've said is kind of etched in stone. It is kind of fluid and flexible, and you are allowed creativity, right? And so if what I've said works perfectly for you, go with it. But if you feel like, I think I should tweak this because this is not going to sit or doesn't sit well with how we are working in the space, then you should tweak it so that you're leveraging everything that you're doing in the most impactful way in your proposals. So yeah, some do's for your needs statements: being clear, concise, cogent, and compelling. You're writing not just for the intellect, but also the heart, because you have to be moving the person who's reading your materials to act. Information is flowing logically to build a case for your proposal. So every single section that is in the proposal is meant to logically build your case so that by the end of it, a person basically says, yes, this is amazing, this must be funded, and I'm going to make the case to fund it. And last of all, it should be engaging for the reader or reviewer. It should not be boring. It should be it's lighting a fire. It's making a lifelong supporter of your work. That's what you should try to aim for in your needs statement. Next slide, please. Don'ts. So this is really critical to kind of be aware of. Do not provide information. Oh, not providing information requested in the RFP. That's request for proposal. So if they've asked for ABC, but you're like, but no, EFG is really important, I think, and you put that in there, that's going to actually hurt you. Right now, I don't have a specific example of what that means, but like when you're reading kind of the request for proposals, let's say they say it's for a particular type of program, but you're like, but I think this program is better than the type of program they're asking for. And then you kind of write a proposal around it. It's not going to be in your favor because it's kind of information they didn't request, and I just kind of jumped to the second bullet that it's outside the scope of the RFP. So basically, read the request for proposal and give them what they're asking for. Please don't use outdated or unsupported information. That is not going to be a compelling case for what you're asking. Also, don't overly put data in your proposals, or don't put enough. And I know we had this conversation about like there are certain communities that don't have the data to be able to talk about why the need is compelling. But we discussed some other creative ways in which you can do that. But just to be kind of mindful of the balance of the qualitative aspect of proposals. Stating facts, staying away from unfamiliar concepts, jargons, or terms. I should have also put acronyms. DC is really bad at acronyms. So if you're going to put an acronym in there, please at some point have spelled it out so the person understands what it actually stands for. And providing, please don't provide circular reasoning as an argument. So like, I had it here because I needed to understand that a little bit better. Yeah, so basically circular arguments for people who may not know is stating the absence of your solution as the problem. So for example, the problem is that we have no youth center. So the solution is to build a youth center. How do you know that the absence of a youth center is a problem? What kind of data do you have to back that up? So just to remember, your solution is not your problem. I hope I didn't confuse anybody with that. I know we only have 4 minutes left, and I think I have only 2 slides left. But are there any questions before I kind of move us to the next slide? Okay, next slide, please. So this is just a recap of a needs statement. You define the problem, you describe implications and importance, you relate to your organization's mission and funders, you show the gaps, and then you support it. Next slide. This is my sort of cheat sheet for what the structure of a needs statement looks like. It is, what is the problem that your project will address or addresses? It's only a few sentences. Consider timely statistics, focus on your solutions, succinctly state what is necessary to solve the problem. This is about half a paragraph. And then keeping in mind that this section is usually followed by the goal and objective section, briefly describe what it will take to solve the problem. And this is about a paragraph and a half. So this is the format of a needs statement worksheet. And I'm sorry, we're like flying through this. Next slide, please. So this is an example of someone who wrote a needs statement. I'll read it. Our youth have limited access to educational resources. They are mostly from low-income households, and the neighborhood in general is very distressed. We have one after-school program that is well attended, but we need more resources to reach more of our students. Please help us educate our youth. If we had more time, I would have asked, what is wrong with this needs statement? But since we don't, we will go to the next slide, please. So the problems with this statement is A, there is absolutely no data or evidence. Exactly, thank you. It's an emotional appeal rather than a rational one. So you're not only just talking to the heart, you have to also talk to the intellect, right? And how do you know that they are mostly from low-income households? How do you know the neighborhood in general is distressed? So I know, I'm sorry that I had to go through that like really fast.
138.
What's the next slide, Salwa? Ooh. So I missed putting in the homework there. You can, so I was going to assign homework and now I totally don't know where that slide went. But basically I would like everyone to start writing because the next time we meet is going to be in 2 weeks, to write start writing their needs statement. And what I'll do is when I put the materials together, the slide with the homework prompt is going to be in your presentation. Unfortunately, it didn't make it into this presentation for some reason. I thought I had done a better job of putting it together, but obviously I did not. And then in 2 weeks, what we'll do is we'll kind of go over any questions after you attempted writing your own needs statement. And then we will talk about the logic model and budget. And then after that, hopefully you will have most of the pieces, if not all, of a grant proposal. All right. Any questions, comments, concerns? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Samin. You should all have received an email with the Zoom link, and that's why you're on here. So we have your email addresses, and we'll send that to you within the next couple of days, the slides and the homework assignment. And if you have any questions in the meantime, on the slides, is Samin's contact information as well, so you can reach out to her. And honestly, Samin, I've been doing it wrong the whole time. Thank you. I think this is amazing. I really appreciate all of that insight. And I think, even though in the end it was a little rushed, it was so much information, and I like that everybody got to really digest it and ask their questions. If there's questions you think of, please make sure that you ask them. Don't wait till 2 weeks from now. Ask them when you get that email, and hopefully in the next 2 weeks you'll have some time to really hammer something great out, because I have so much homework right now. But thank you all for joining us. One more question, one more thing. If anybody says, oh, this was awesome, I want to attend, we're closing registration for this. So you can teach them what you learned, but we're not going to be having any more people sign up. Okay, so I just wanted to give that information. So is anything else, that they need to know for next time?
No, I would say just if you can, please attempt writing the needs statement, because I think as we do the logic model, it'll come in handy, as well as, well, the budget, not so much, but definitely the logic model, like that part, it will come in handy.
I have a question. Can we share the recording since the registration is closed, or for the class, if somebody else is interested in learning?
I think if the recording, I'll have to talk to Samin and we'll figure out if we want to share that. We will be sharing the slides, but I'm not 100% sure yet about the recording because you know, we want this to be a space where people can ask and practice and talk about things without worrying about somebody not being here, taking things out of context or anything like that. So I think we'll think about the recording part of it, but if you were here and you missed part of it, then I can upload it to a drive and, you know, you can watch it, and then I'll change the access of it after we're done with the class. But we do want to make sure that people are here and engaging with the content and not just seeing it without having the opportunity to ask questions and understand it fully.
Yes, thank you.
Yep. So I think that's it. We're at 9:04. So we're going to end for today, and we will see you on the 23rd at 7 p.m. Right? So see you all in a
Thank
couple
you.
weeks. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Assalamualaikum. See you guys next time.
You're so funny. Hey, Elsa.
I'm a disaster. That's why my camera's off.
You're never a disaster. You're beautiful.
Oh, you're still recording. But thank you. No, I'm a mess. So
I don't care if the
but
world knows it, Hafsa.